Joining us now is Democratic Senator Jeff Merkley of Oregon. He is the ranking member of the Budget Committee. Senator, it's great to have you with us. Are you willing to vote no and shut down the government?
Well, the Republicans are shutting down the government. They control all the branches of government. They have been the ones refusing to meet with Democrats. That is not the way the Senate works. During the time that the Senate was in the Democratic majority, we held extensive negotiations over every continuing resolution. And we take seriously what the president said back in 2013, when he was not the president. He said, if there's a shutdown, it's because the president of the United States, is what Trump said, because the president of the United States failed to bring people together. But now Trump's in office. He's refused to meet with Democrats. The majority leader of the Senate refused to meet with Democrats. The Speaker of the House refused to meet with Democrats until this deadline, and the House isn't even coming in until tomorrow. This is a Republican shutdown, clear and simple. They passed this bill, which was a families lose, billionaires win, shutting down health care in order to fund tax breaks for billionaires, shutting down nutrition for kids to fund tax breaks for billionaires, adding $30 trillion to the tax breaks for billionaires. And we're saying, hell no, we want a families thrive and billionaires pay their fair share. We put some very reasonable provisions forward, including that what is done by Congress cannot be undone by the President of the United States, because the Constitution is clear. The power of the purse rests with Congress, not the president. So
to be clear, you would be a no vote on this continuing resolution today?
I think you would see every Democrat vote against this partisan strategy of families lose, billionaires win. Absolutely.
What we do know about at least one Democrat planning to vote with Republicans, and that's Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman. Here's what he said.
Our core responsibility as a senator is keep our government open. Why would we shut it down? The president has a lot of levers he could pull. This is one we could pull, but why would we pull that lever? Because that allows him to pull a lot more levers and make a lot of changes about the government that we can't, that he can't do now. But until we shut it down, then that creates all new opportunities for him or vote to make all these kinds of changes.
Senator, what's your response to that argument?
Well, I'm responding to the situation that is in front of us, which is the Republicans have pursued a strategy of hurting American families, not just with health care. But, the president was just talking to the generals, bragging about the tariffs. He said it's raised trillions of dollars. It's actually raised only about $150 billion more than the old tariff. But that's because it acts as a sales tax on America. So he's driving up the cost of things for families. Health care is going up. Electricity is growing up. Groceries are going up. And what has happened with the attack on healthcare is you have then, therefore, 8 months of families being sicker and poor. That's the Trump agenda. We're saying we're going to fight for families. That's important. It's important to say this path is the wrong path for America.
On that healthcare piece of it, Majority Leader Thune has argued that Republicans are willing to negotiate even on the healthcare tax credits, just not right now. Watch.
Give us some time to do the rest of the appropriations bills, and if there are other issues they want to talk about, one of which is this premium tax credit issue, we welcome that conversation. But you can't hold the federal government hostage. Release the hostage, and then we can start talking about.
Let's bring into the conversation Democratic Congressman Jim Himes of Connecticut. He's the ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee. Congressman, good to see you. A lot to talk to you about, including the shutdown looming. But just want to get you in on the conversation we've been having about the discussion of political violence, the divisive rhetoric we hear from the very top of the Trump administration. What has been your approach as we've seen this just spate in the last couple of weeks of horrific tragedies, these shootings, some of them driven by politics?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Willie. And look, you put the facts out there. It's particularly painful for those of us who lived through January 6, 2021, when thousands of enraged Trump supporters visited us at our place of work, broke windows, killed police officers, looked to hang the vice president, and now, that is being sort of memory hold in favor of some other narrative. Because, and here's the core of it, Willie. Here's why this is happening. You might say, what's the logic here? The logic is that if you're Donald Trump or J.D. Vance or Stephen Miller, you realize that rage and grievance, anger are enormously powerful things. And if you can get 30-40% of the country just filled with grievance and rage, you can get that same 30 and 40% of the country to ignore the fact that you are taking away their health care. That in the big, beautiful bill, Medicaid was gutted in a way that will throw 10 million people, by the way, many in Republican states, off of their health care, that will close hospitals. And you can get people to ignore that in the next couple of months, and this is what this shutdown is all about, the Affordable Care Act subsidies, which provide health insurance for millions of Americans, are simply going away. So if you can get people focused on racist videos of Hakeem Jeffries dressed up like a Mexican with a sombrero, if you can blame others, if you can say that the Democrats are radical extremists, you're hoping that people won't notice the intense damage that is being done to probably the most important thing Americans have, which is their access to health care.
By the way, that video was not sent out by some random internet troll. It was reposted by the President of the United States after the meeting with Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer yesterday. So let's get to the shutdown, Congressman. What is your sense? Is there any chance to avert this? We're just hours away right now. And if there is, in fact, a shutdown, what are the real impacts in your state, for example?
Yeah, here we are on the day of, and, you see how serious the party that has the White House, the Senate, and the House is about getting to a deal, because when the president finally relented and met with the Democratic leaders, who, by the way, the president's statement that he doesn't need the Democrats notwithstanding, that's not true, right? In the Senate, you need a few Democrats to join you, and the president has said over and over again, we don't need them. And then, again, just to show how serious they are about actually reaching a solution, just look at that video. Blatant racism, profane. The American people are going to see that, and they're going to know who's being serious here. To your question about what happens here, and I'm glad you asked it, because there's going to be an awful lot of finger pointing going on. But what's going to happen is that hundreds of thousands of hardworking people at the Department of Agriculture, people who make sure Social Security checks go out, people who check for bombs in airports, are not going to get paid, or they're going to get furloughed, right? And that's going to create an immense amount of damage for people, for good-hearted public servants. Americans themselves are going to see that when grandma reaches retirement age, all of a sudden it's going to be hard for her to get onto Social Security. If you had a trip planned to a national park, that ain't happening. I could go on with the amount of pain that is going to be caused by the American people, all because the people who have the trifecta in the United States government are much more interested in putting up racist AI-generated videos than they are in actually governing this country.
Senator Wood, more time to negotiate makes sense. Why not give another 7 weeks to make something happen?
Started several months ago, right? Because John Thune has said, I will not talk to Democrats. And it was like a game of chicken. I'm going to drive down the highway. I'm going to aim at the other car, and I'm going to refuse to talk to them. And, well, you end up with a car crash. Well, this is the Republican shutdown. This is the Republican car crash going to hurt all Americans, because John Thune was unwilling to sit down and start talking about these issues.
I mean, what assurances would you need at this point from Republicans on health care to get you to sign on to maybe a stopgap bill, considering they have spent over a decade trying to destroy the ACA, a.k.a. Obamacare?
Well, it would have to be pretty, Vance actually said, I'm told, that some of these ideas you Democrats presented are good ideas and worth considering. Well, okay, great. Well, then start talking to us a couple months ago. But say, hey, yes, we don't want to increase the cost of healthcare by 75% here a couple months from now. That's bad for America, and quite frankly, it's bad for the Republican Party. We don't want to decimate Medicaid starting in January of 2027, where an incredible impact on not just those who have Medicaid across this country, and that includes people in nursing homes, the disabled, our veterans, so many folks. It's a program that affects, a third of my state. Well, 30% of my state is on the Oregon Health Plan, and 60% of the children. I mean, it's a massive impact on decimating healthcare. It's the absolutely, basically, let's take and help the best off be better off while taking the struggling and hurting them. It's like a red carpet for the rich, and it's red tape and devastation for struggling families trying to get on their feet. This is the concern, and it's not just over the policies. It's over the fact that an authoritarian president is trying to take the power of the purse that belongs under Congress in the Constitution and take it and get an executive line item veto, which the Supreme Court has already said is illegal. They're doing it through funding slowdowns, funding freezes, funding basically grabbing the funds and saying we're never going to release them through this end of fiscal year rescission strategy. So we have to say no to this authoritarian takeover as well. And the piece that we have control over, a lot of the pieces we don't have control over, the piece we have control over is to say if we have passed into law funding for programs, it is the executive's responsibility to proceed to follow the law and distribute those funds to those programs, and not to freeze or impound or slow down or slow walk that funding to the end of the fiscal year.
Okay, Democratic Senator Jeff Merkley of Oregon, appreciate your time. Thanks for...
What's happening here looks simple, yet it's being spun to seem complicated. The truth is clear, though. Donald Trump and Republican leadership are steering America straight into a shutdown, and then trying to blame everyone else for the crash. They control the White House, the Senate, and the House. That means that they also hold the responsibility. Yet instead of negotiating months in advance, they waited until the last possible moment, refused to meet with Democrats, and now want to frame this chaos as someone else's fault. Think about it. Back in 2013, Trump himself said that if the government shuts down, it represents a failure of the president to bring people together. Fast forward to today, and suddenly he acts as though that logic no longer applies to him. What he shows is straight-up hypocrisy, not real leadership, and the consequences reach far beyond Washington's games. A shutdown means real Americans get hurt, families lose access to healthcare, veterans face delays in service, workers get furloughed, and kids lose nutrition programs. Meanwhile, billionaires keep their tax breaks. Families lose while billionaires win. Every time. Trump keeps bragging about tariffs, claiming they raised trillions of dollars. In reality, they pulled in only about $150 billion more than before, and that's because tariffs are nothing more than a hidden sales tax on Americans, a regressive sales tax. They raise the cost of groceries, electricity, and everyday goods, especially for poorer people. So real families absorb that pain, while Trump spins it as some grand win for the country. Look at all the money we're making directly from our own citizens. The result is working people footing the bill for his bad math and empty chest thumping. Even more alarming, Trump is trying to bend the Constitution to his will, more like break it to his will. The power of the purse belongs to Congress, period. The Supreme Court already ruled against an executive line item veto, yet his administration is searching for backdoor ways to freeze or impound funds, edging towards this complete authoritarian takeover of congressional power. If he controls the funds, he controls everything. That course sets a really dangerous precedent. Once you allow a president to decide unilaterally what laws to follow and what funding to release to whom, checks and balances vanish. What remains is one man calling the shots. The cruelty is deliberate, too. Gutting Medicaid and healthcare subsidies forces millions off of coverage, closes hospitals, and makes children and seniors pay the price. And instead of admitting that real human beings are suffering because of this and will suffer, Trump's team just floods the zone with rage bait, racist videos, distractions, and culture war noise, hoping that people won't notice that their pocketbooks are shrinking and their healthcare disappearing. That amounts to manipulation in its rawest form. At the end of the day, the core issue does not revolve around budget math or administration or procedure. It revolves around Trump putting his ego and billionaire donors above everyday Americans. He plays chicken with the economy, gambles with people's lives, and dares anyone to stop him. The behavior amounts to sabotage dressed up as politics. And if this gets normalized, then shutdowns, broken systems, and executive overreach will become the new standard. America deserves better than a president who treats power as a personal toy while the rest of the country pays the price.